Former United States Congressman Joe Cunningham, who represented the 1st Congressional District in the Lowcountry in Washington, is now a Democratic gubernatorial candidate here in South Carolina. I talk one-on-one with the congressman for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Congressman Joe Cunningham, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Great to be here, Quintin. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Obviously, you are a Democratic gubernatorial candidate for the state of South Carolina, and today is election day around many states here in the United States. I know that Republicans could win tonight in Virginia, a state that a Republican hasn't won statewide since 2009. Similar to your race in 2018, the 1st Congressional District had not won Democrats in decades. What are Democrats in your mind doing wrong that would make a race so close when just 1 year ago, President Joe Biden won that state by 10 points?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, Quintin, we've been focused on our race in South Carolina, so I can't really speak to too much of the dynamics that are going on in Virginia. I can tell you, since the last 6 months, as I've been running for governor, been crisscrossing the state and taking our vision and our ideas to we're trying to get to every one of the 46 counties in our 46 county tour, and we've been presenting a different vision for people, and this is a contrast. This election in South Carolina next year is a contrast between the past versus the future. We're running against somebody, Henry McMaster, who's been a politician longer than I've been alive, literally. And where do we find ourselves here in South Carolina? We're at the bottom of education, infrastructure, healthcare, all these because we continue living in the past with McMaster. But I want to take our state forward. I want to create new jobs and different jobs, and I want to expand Medicaid. I want to give our teachers a raise. I think we can do all these things if we have a different vision.
Now, if hypothetically Youngkin wins tonight in Virginia, how do you prepare for that not to happen here in South Carolina in your race?
Well, again, I think that each state's different with their different dynamics. I can't speak to Virginia, but I can tell you what folks are talking about here on the ground in South Carolina, and about how this governor has botched this whole response to COVID. He's catered to conspiracy theorists. That's who's in his inner circle. That's who's in his ear. People who are conspiracy theorists and don't believe that COVID is a serious threat.
Who is Joe Cunningham right now?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a father. I've got a 3.5-year-old son, Boone, who just a couple of days ago went as a spaceship for Halloween. And, I'm a father who's trying to pass along the same values that my dad instilled in me, empathy and compassion, and honesty, integrity, and whenever life knocks you down to always get back up. And I envision the South Carolina, the state that I want to leave behind for him and his generation, the generations that follow. And my vision and my idea of South Carolina is a lot better than what we currently have right now. And, I know our current governor has been complacent in being dead last in education or infrastructure or healthcare, but I don't see any reason why we can't be first in a lot of these categories, and a lot of these issues, and why South Carolina can't lead the nation in all these.
And I'm going to get to that in just a second, but you said this recently on Twitter, quote, they say a Democrat couldn't win in South Carolina. Well, in 2018, I flipped a Trump plus 13 district and proudly represented the Lowcountry in Congress. Now I'm running for governor. But let me ask you this, Congressman. Didn't you prove that they couldn't do that in 2020?
Well, I think that when you take a look at presidential election years and midterms, they're just completely different. And I think it's important to also note, Quintin, that this is a district that was heavily gerrymandered. No Democrat was ever to win. Republicans drew this district. It's a viable Republican district. And then we proved them wrong in 2018. And in 2020, we almost did the impossible twice. Even though Trump, won the district by 5 or 6 points, we only lost it by 1 point in 2020. So there's a pattern of us overperforming and outperforming expectations. And so again, this district was drawn to be a safe Republican district, and we almost did the impossible twice.
I'm gonna get to that in just a second too. But you also said, but okay, let me ask you this, Congressman. Why can't you just run for your old seat?
Well, look, I'm a strong believer in you go where you feel the need is, and I want to try to make as big and positive of an impact as I possibly can. And when I ran for Congress back in 2018, I was running to provide checks and balances. We had Trump in the White House, we had Republicans control the House and the Senate, and I served in D.C. for 2 years and realized how slow moving progress is, if any. And meanwhile, all the negative impacts were happening on the statewide level. Whether it be in a state like Georgia with voting rights, or a state like Texas prohibiting women's access to control their own reproductive health, and then South Carolina here. We were going through the pandemic, and the issues that Governor McMaster is focused on is signing an open carry bill in the law, or the most restrictive abortion bill. I mean, the priorities are completely misplaced, and so the need for our state and to make our future better, not just for my son, but his generation, the ones that follow. The needs right here in South Carolina is where we can make the biggest impact and effectuate the most change, because we got to be looking at what kind of future we're leaving behind for our kids. And maybe McMaster is complacent and happy with being last in infrastructure and last in education. Maybe he doesn't care about that, but for me, I do. I think most South Carolinians do. Most South Carolinians want to win and be number one in these issues, and have a better quality of life for their kids.
Now, to be fair, Congressman, do you put the blame also on the House of Representatives, which most of your Democrats are in?
Put the blame for what?
Open carry bill.
No, the open carry bill was a bill signed by Governor McMaster and passed by the Republican-controlled House and Senate. So they all share responsibility in that. And I've talked to a lot of people who look. I own a firearm. I've got my concealed weapon permit, but I don't feel comfortable with people without any specific training carrying a firearm on their hip. And I know people in the service industry who are waiting tables don't feel comfortable waiting on somebody who's got an open, has a firearm right there on their hip, not knowing what they may have been dealing with that particular day, or what training they have, or what training they haven't had. So when you're governor of the state, though, the buck stops with you. If Governor McMaster did not agree with that, he should have vetoed it. But he has stated openly his support for it. And that's exactly the type of failed leadership we need to get rid of.
And I know you're running out of time, actually, but let me talk to you about term limits. Term limits may sound good to some voters, Congressman, but if we don't pay legislators, you'll continue to only have legislative candidates who are wealthy, also are maintaining a business or law practice with conflicts of interest while in office, or participate in corruption, that is. How is the state pricing out the good people?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of problems with our state politics, and there's a lot of corruption there too. And we've got somebody that who's been in office for one office or another for 40 years, and my campaign has been leading on policy, and we've got a corruption plan on our website. You can go to joeforsouthcarolina.com that prohibits legislators from raising money and while they're in session, and so that's so they can focus more on doing their job than keeping their job, because their constant goal is simply to get reelected. Their goal is not to advance the interest of South Carolinians, and that's not how it should be. We should have a system of government that's at least as good as the people that it represents. And right now, our government has failed us time and time again, and that's why we have to tackle corruption head on, and that's why my campaign has been leading on this issue.
Could you make legislators full-time salary offices, add a second session of equal length of time to the current one, and pay the legislators the median income of South Carolina workers with step increases for more low unemployment rates?
Well, look, I think, before we started talking about expanding legislative session, I think we got to focus on the substance first. We're going through the middle of a pandemic, Quintin, and at that time, the very first bill this governor signed into law was the most restrictive abortion bill in the entire country. The things that they're focused on right now, we're in the middle of redistricting right now. and they still haven't produced maps for this upcoming election because they're still trying to figure out ways to gerrymander these districts even further. So you need somebody who's going to keep them focused and on the task at hand. And we're not currently doing that, and this governor has shown that he's incapable of doing it. So I think I got time for one more question, Quintin. Then I got to move on to another event.
Yeah, you voted against raising the minimum wage in Congress. The wage gap between South Carolina families are glaringly evident in education and housing. How would you consider families over business owners?
Look, I support the increase in minimum wage and been very, very clear about that. It needs an increase of double digits. Where it is right now is an embarrassment. To not only South Carolina but the families too. The bill that came through to raise it to $15 an hour also included a portion that would eliminate tipped wages. So the people who are working at restaurants, would actually end up getting paid less in the hospitality industry under the current bill. But look, I support raising the minimum wage, and I support, driving down the cost of living expenses, whether it be through, providing better access to healthcare, making it affordable, or driving down the cost of education. There's a lot of these things that are at play here that we need to focus on, but they're currently being ignored by this governor. And this is because it's the same way of thinking, and it's the same past way of thinking that he's provided. So,
are you running as a centrist Democrat?
Look. I'm running as a Democrat, and I'm running as somebody who's gotten things accomplished and who can effectuate change, who can build bridges and bring people together. You look at my record, Quintin, and the race that I've won was an uphill battle that nobody thought we could win. And I think, look, when we try to categorize people and pit people against and put people in different camps and start dividing people, I think that's when our country begins to fall apart. And I think that's exactly what's wrong is drawing these boundaries. And because the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of things that people agree on, both the left and right side of the Democratic Party, and often the left and right side of government as a whole. But they oftentimes get ignored because people are more interested in us versus them. You look at it right now; it's on every single level, trying to divide people. Whereas I've got a record of accomplishments, and I got that by bringing people together. So,
Congressman Joe Cunningham,
I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and I'll have you back on Quintin's Close-Ups next year.